And I think we're live. Okay.
Whoa.
Anybody who's joining, thank you so much for joining. I think we had like a 2-month period of not doing our stream, which is on us. And so we're so happy to be back at it and that people remember that we exist. The reception to the Qwik beta announcement has been phenomenal. So we're excited to get back here talking about Qwik and everything else, web development, DX, high performance. Like, it's exciting. We have the usual couple here, Manu and Mishko, where Mishko will just talk about awesome, cool concepts, and Manu will demo really cool stuff about Qwik React. So we'll get to that. And we have a new regular coming on, Yoav, who's joined the Builder team to help out with dev experience and DevRel. So he'll be speaking up here as well. Or if you want to introduce yourself too, Yoav, give you a moment.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Nice to see, you guys. Good to be here. It's lovely to join. I even have my own special shirt for this little stream. I'm not overreacting. From next React Next conference in Israel. So coming in live, having some whiskey because it's night for me. So going to keep it happy.
I love it. Thank you, Yoav. And hey, anybody tuning in, please drop us a note in the chat, tell us where you're from, and ask questions throughout. We're going to cover how to use Qwik with React, what the sort of pros and what the occasional constraints are, and kind of why we do this, and what level of resumability you can get out of React. I think there's some really cool components here. So as you see stuff, please ask questions. We'll get those in. I will have questions because it seems like this evolves every day. Oh, hey, Glenn's here. Welcome, Glenn. Yeah. It's an amazing contributor. So is Lever too. So amazing. Anyway, Manu, do you want to kick us off and explain to us a bit, what are we even talking about? Qwik React, what does that mean? Aren't these two different frameworks? Does it even make sense? And you tell me when you want to show the screen share too.
Okay. Yeah. No. It's something that's always been kind of in back of our minds to design Qwik from the very early days. Where it was all about resumability to see how we can merge some of the best ideas of both frameworks, right? And kind of at some point realize that we need to have they need to be different. There is at certain points where it needs to be different, and then get to the point where come to the whole circle and say maybe we can actually get the full React inside, kind of in a partial hydration basis. And it really happened by mistake. I think that's one of the interesting things about our approach of how it works. And I think that the name of the talk is or the name of the bit is Resumable Qwik. I think it's kind of funny because it's really how it happened. We never really create Qwik to do this, right, in the first place. Yeah, maybe I don't know. We can start with some demo or something, or
let's do that. No, I love that. And just for anybody listening into, one of the other ways to think about this is any new framework, as you know, the first thing it'll be missing is ecosystem. One awesome part of React is there's 1,000 million libraries and components and amazing animation things, and just there's so many things you can get building so quickly. And one framework I absolutely love, all of us love, is Solid.js. And the big question is ooh, it's going to take time for Solid.js to catch up there. And it is, which is really, really awesome. And projects like Mitosis we make will help across these new frameworks too. But what's crazy is, kind of like Manu was saying, with Qwik and being able to use React components in Qwik, we can serialize those. I don't want to actually spoil it how it works, but basically you could leverage the React ecosystem while maintaining most, if not sometimes all, of the performance benefits of Qwik to get over this cold start problem of adopting something new. Very inspired by Astro in a lot of ways. And it's really cool how it works. This is very unique here. So let me let Manu share screen here. Yeah. And Manu, walk us through it.
Yes. So now it's something that you can already try. So if you just run npm run Qwik, I will just show it in a second. But as you said, not only use these components in Qwik, but you can maybe use these components without even loading any JavaScript, which is kind of the very kind of superpower that Qwik can get to it. So let me try to. So I'm going to just try to create a demo from scratch. So I'm going to just npm create Qwik. I'm going to call it React. I'm going to put a number here because probably have 5 applications with the same name. So basic app, sure. So I'm going to just do from scratch. They don't have any really demo prepared. So let's just get started. So if we start the application, of course, no, it's fine.
Everybody put in the chat what you think of Manu's live coding skills. rated out of 10.
Sure.
Also, we've challenged him to do this live completely, just so he messes
Don't
it
even
up.
try. Like, don't even like practice it, no?
He lost
This-
a bet, so he had to do it live.
It reminds
All
me,
natural.
it's like I'm the kind of person that prints something in the printer without even like checking the preview, right? It's just like print. I don't even want to check how it's going to look like. So when you have an application, anyways, this works. The integrations we have for Qwik, I think it's like very inspired by Astro. We have this command saying npm run Qwik add, right? And it will tell you like all the integrations we have. Now, right now, they're kind of like messy here, but as we are getting like a critical point where we have a lot, and there is actually more integrations for what I'm going to show for React. There is like open PRs for Solid and open PR for Vue, 100% driven by the community. So also, like, if you are like after this video, like you are like, oh, I would like to do this for, your framework preference. I can actually put you in contact with another parts of the community, or just something for your, another framework. I don't know, like web components, for example. So just get React, click. It's going to tell you that, it's going to install a bunch of dependencies, and it's going to create a bunch of files. These files are kind of like a demo of what it is. So I'm going to say yes. It's going to install the dependencies. And just with this, we should be able to have a quick application with React. So let's see if it works. It will work, by the way, of course. Okay, npm start. Okay, so I'm going to open the app and see that the demo created a new folder here in the route, so React, and a new kind of like a new path, right? So if I go here and say React, we should be able to see a Qwik React mother of all demos. So let's maybe explore this a bit. This is just like a different components. I'm just interacting with them. But under the hood, this button, this slider, I can actually click here. It's like a huge, complicated React component, use a lot like a data grid thing. It's being used within the context of Qwik, right? And we are like just leveraging this big, ecosystem of React application, right? Which is, I think, is super cool, because I don't think something interesting to think about this is like, we don't leverage React to have interactivity in a Qwik application, but more like more like to use all the like ecosystem, right? More than I want to build my app using React components. But I think that's a bit of philosophical difference between Astro and Qwik, right? Because in Astro, if you want to add some interactivity, then you kind of choose a framework to do that, right? And in Qwik, it's more like it will not be the same motivation, if that makes sense. I don't know if
did you cover this, Manu? Are these components hydrating with React? Are some of them doing interactively purely with Qwik, and React was just server-side HTML and nothing in the client? Or is there a mix going on here?
Yeah, there is, right? And so I'm going to get to it. I'm going to put one side by side, and we are going to explore a bit of the code, because that's a very good question. So this is a React application. So first of all, we have the integrations, we have the Vue, and we are using Material UI. So these components are really Material UI components. So in this kind of integrations, React, we are not really doing anything with them. We are just what we call quickify a component, right? So Qwik React exposes this API. That's the only API that we expose. And it's a quickify. And just by context, maybe you can get what it does, right? Like if you see this line here, we take the original component from a Material UI, and you get this Qwik component, right? So we have another one for slides, and we have another big one like Inline React component. So this is really a React component. You can use state from React, right? And it will work. Like it's really a React component with all the React runtime, everything, right? So what Steve mentioned is, well, do I need to actually hydrate this component, or how does it work? The idea is that in your application, you have this very little, you have this file over here where you Qwikify and you get just a Qwik component, just like the rest of the components you have, right? And one of the features, right? One of the how do you say, like one of the properties of a Qwik component is that it will not run any JavaScript by default, and that's literally what is happening here. So I'm going to change this eagerness here, because I'm going to try to make this. I'm going to build this like step by step. And if we run, we have this. I'm going to kind of simplify this a bit. So we run this application. If I try to interact with it, nothing happens, right? I'm going to open the DevTools.
Manu, I think it's worth pointing out that at this point, like the component rendered on a server, right, and there's no JavaScript on a client, which is the reason why no interaction is happening. But I think it's worth really just driving home the fact that we have server-side rendering, and both Qwik is server-side rendering as well as React is server-side rendering, and everything is getting inline in the correct places and all hooked up in the correct way, so that the SEO works and all the other stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So this is if I disable JavaScript, right? So it's not maybe the most impressive thing. And we refresh. This will still be behaving like I was showing before, right? This is just HTML, right? All these React components are not really executing any React in the browser. I think like that's kind of trivial.
So wait, Manu.
Yeah.
So if you would open up like React DevTools, we wouldn't see anything, for example, right?
Yeah.
We don't have props. We don't have anything.
Absolutely. No, it will nothing happen, right? And I'm going to show you actually when it happens. You will see it here. I'm going to just go to this button component, right? We have this. It's going to simplify this a bit. We can add this code later. I'm going to say the variant is solid. I think solid is the word. No. Contain. Sorry. So it looks like this. So if I go here and I say client over, look what happens. Look at the console. I'm going to over it. And now we see that, like download React DevTools for better, like at this point, React ran, right? And actually the component became interactive. So maybe for a button doesn't really make sense to get the whole React just to make a button interactive, right? In case of Material UI, the interactivity is for this ripple effect. I don't know if you can notice it. Like there is like a little effect here. That if I remove this, right, nothing happens, but also you don't download any JavaScript. The interesting thing about this is that you can still have interactivity without React, right? And that's what you can kind of mix part of Qwik with parts of React, which is something that Astro cannot do, because all the interactivity in a framework like Astro is like it's owned by the framework. So I'm going to just show how I can actually click something, can actually click the component without having to download Qwik, and I can just use the host event. So this host event is actually going to put a click handler in the kind of the host element of the React component. So it doesn't really need to get the actual click from the real React component, but it will work.
This is going to be like the parent, or this is going to be the grandparent, or it's just the component that is
like
wrapped with the Qwik effect.
Yeah, it's a good question. So in Qwikify, like every of these like islands get surrounded with something called Qwik React. So it's like a little like wrapper.
Could you make the font bigger? I don't think it's hard to read. Maybe make the white area smaller. Yeah.
So the component itself, this one over here, is surrounded. Like this is the button, the button rendered by Material UI with 100 million classes, and then it has the motion things, and everything is wrapped around this Qwik React component. This Qwik React is actually an element owned by Qwik. So this component can actually react to a click without any JavaScript or things like that, right? You don't need to get the whole React just to interact with the button. And that's what I have here. I have this click, right? And I can click it, and you will see an alert, and you will not see, that the whole React loaded. Like at this point, no React was like ever downloaded, right? This might
Can you explain maybe how it works though? Like behind the scenes, like what are you doing in order to get that kind of behavior working?
That's kind of the how
secret
resumability
sauce. Don't tell him everything, but like a little bit of the secret sauce.
So if we open the dev tools, we will see that by the time I click, let's see this. I'm going to refresh. So this is Vite. So this is like deep dev tools for. This is really not Qwik. It's really like just Vite during development. So I'm just going to clean this up, and I'm going to click the button. So see that one piece of code downloaded, right?
Yes.
See the size. Like the size is like, like 100 bytes. And really the only code that got downloaded for this interaction is this, right? So I'm using a material UI component with the whole rendered by the whole React and rendered by the whole emotion. And the only thing that get downloaded to or get executed, right, to do one action is this, nothing else.
That's amazing,
right? Of course, here I'm making the trade-off to say I don't want the ripple effect and all these things, right? And it's fine. But if, for example, if we check the slider, the slider will not work, right? Because the slider needs to be interactive. Like it's a component a bit more complicated than a button. That makes sense? So we kind of have to use the same thing. We have to say client and say, well, this has to be hydrated when it's in over, for example, right? So now, again, like if I scroll to it and I just over it, you will see that the whole thing gets downloaded, which is basically the whole React and like material UI and everything. And now I can interact with it.
Right, but maybe it's important to kind of let me see if I understand this correctly, right? So without us really adding like those quick directives, like the React component will be completely server-side rendered and send it down the wire as HTML. But in order to gain interactivity, we have to use like the host syntax for Qwik, correct?
Yes. So the host doesn't add interactivity. The host is really like, I want to put like an event on the host element, right? So for a click, it's fine. For a click, it's like, okay, but the one that you want to use to add interactivity to the component itself is the client directives, right? And this is really inspired by Astro. Astro has exactly the same thing. So the client directives that we have right now are like, we have several. So you have client load. So imagine you want a component that immediately, right, after the website loads, you just want to, make it interactive, right? Most of the times you don't really need that. You maybe need something like visible, right? So when the component actually becomes visible, then is when you can actually interact with it, which makes sense, right?
But is there a default, Manu?
No, by default it's nothing, right? By default is no interactivity. By default, a Qwik component will, a React component in Qwik will not download any React. That's the default.
But you don't have to.
That's a big caveat. Yeah.
Well, hold on, but you don't have to add the hover directive to every single instance, right? You can just configure Qwikify to automatically add it to every single one.
Yeah. So for example,
it's not like you have to do this ceremony for every single component you place on a page.
Yeah. So for example, for a slider, you saw before that I was doing this, right? To add it, like to make it work. But that's a very good point. Like for a button, that's fine, but you will argue that for a slider, that's not okay, right? Because a slider without the client over is useless, basically, right? That's what I actually have originally here. You can, for every component, you can set some defaults, and I can say the eagerness of this component, it's on over, right? So now I don't really have to put the client thing. Now it will just work whenever I put it, right? It will already be like every time you use it, it will already have like client over on it. That makes sense?
I have a question. Why are you separating it to separate files? Why not just have everything in the same file?
So Qwik and React are very similar. So actually, it can work if you put it in the same file. It could actually work. But the idea with integrations is that it's looking forward, and you might have like Svelte components. You might have like even like Angular components or like Vue, and all these like frameworks come with very heavy compiler transformations that we can really mix it in the same file. That makes sense? Like we can export it and make it here, but we cannot really mix both.
I was kind of leading you to the question of like, why do you have line number 1, right? Because what you want to do is you want to tell the compiler that this thing is owned by a different system than, JSX here is not the same thing as JSX inside of a Qwik application. It's a different kind of JSX.
Yeah, no, I guess like this, for example, could work like mode nested. Like I think this kind of component can even work if you put it here, kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's a good practice to separate it. I think like in all these projects where you are mixing different frameworks, you don't mix it like in the same file. Like you don't want to put like a solid component and a React component in exactly the same file because it's
be super confusing. Yeah, separation is smarter.
Because
separation of concerns. Yay, back.
Yeah.
Cool again.
Another thing I want to show, which is kind of cool, is like I'm going to remove this component, right? And I'm going to make a new Qwik component. I'm going to make a component. It's going to be called counter. Very, very exciting component, by the way. I'm going to take care of. Oh, this is nice. Oops. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Copilot to almost. Not this button. Just a button. All right. So I'm going to make just a button. I'm going to call increment. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to, one of the actually very cool things is that I can actually put this component here, this button here. It's kind of dumb because it's inside. Wait, I think I cannot put maybe a button inside a button. I think that's like a breakage of the rules.
Yeah.
But let me think in a different way. So I can.
Mishko, we got to send Manu to learn how to write.
Just you don't have to be a button. Just do a span, right? Over there, it's fine.
Yeah, but look, I want to make this button interactive without downloading React. So that's kind of the goal. Because before we do this layer, that is kind of like simple. Like in a case, I might have this material UI component that I want to click, and I want to say count is value. So think about this one, right? It's a material UI component, and I'm reacting to a click, and I want to be able to update its content with something dynamic, right? And in Astro, that will mean that you have to in this case you have to download the component. You have to download React to be able to react to these things. But in this case, I can have interactivity without loading React. So notice there is no React because there was not like the whole thing that is downloaded is this, right? There is not the DevTools thing that we see before. It's really, we can have like dynamic slot projection without having to wake up React or like download React or hydrate React or anything like that, which makes it very practical in my opinion. You can use these components in a more like real use cases without ever having to even think about hydrating the component. I don't know. I think it's
yeah, but the beauty of what just happened here, sorry, Mishko, is that you just use state inside React, but not with React state, but with signals.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you look at the implementation, actually what it's doing is that it's kind of, this might be actually mind-blowing, is that if I put a console log here, right, and say rendering, right, and I do that, notice the console logs. There is no rendering. like Qwik is able to even like have reactivity of this Qwik component without having to download the Qwik component itself.
Can I layer onto this one? This is like, so I really want to like make a tweet on this, honestly, to like point this out. So with that, if this was just a React component, then that log would run once on the server, once on the client on boot up, and then every time again after you're interacting. If this was something like Solid.js that improves on it, it'll be once on the server, once on the client, and then never again on interaction, because that's signals, the way Solid.js uses it. With Qwik, it's once on the server and literally never again. You're both not hydrating you're at any point, not just on boot up, but not even as interactions subsequently occur. And that doesn't even factor in the fact that you're using React components. So if you used MUI and you just use buttons and cards and all this stuff, things that don't need internal interactivity within the React component, but can be external with Qwik, even including projection in layers inside, etc. You can build entire applications that never hydrate using React components that have very little JS, yet they are as interactive as you want them to be. Anyway, sorry for interrupting, Manu.
No, I think that's a really way to put it. Like, I think kind of the business, we were keeping thinking about what is the thing that, like, what is the most essential thing that Qwik does? And it's hard to explain because it's not about like lazy loading. It's not about like performance. I think what is deep down in like our vision is that you build like the happy path to get your application like running is the performance path. Like there is no like a easy way, and then like there is a much harder way, but it's going to lead to a better, most performant application. Just this one way, right? You just build your application. Well, that's kind of our philosophy, like design philosophy. We just want to have a way that is the way that the way of less friction that is going to lead to the most performant website, right? And let's reduce the amount of friction that you make.
I think you told me this once. It was make the right thing really easy to do, is what you told me.
Yeah. I think that helps a long way, right? Because we just make, I think like if we just make a framework that if you just start using it by default, it's going to be like a slow website. But then we tell you, well, you aren't using it wrong, right? You should have been like doing things in a different way. I think we will not be talking about Qwik. We will talking about a different philosophy. I think that the philosophy of Qwik is to solve this problem. I don't know if we're totally solving in all the aspects, right? But it's definitely is in our minds when we think about the APIs, right? And with Qwik, the same. That's why with React it's the same. Like by default, we just want to say, well, by default, no JavaScript loads, right? That's why, like, if you are sure later, it's like, yeah, okay, now I need that, right? It's for like the slider. It's like, yeah, actually the slider, I need the interactivity, right? So yeah, that's.
I want to point out another cool thing. Like I know what you just showed is super cool, but I think the other cool part is that we have a Qwik application that has a Qwik component, which has a React component, which then internally projects, its props children, which is a Qwik content, right? And it's the fact that it's like what you have on line 14 and 15, right? The fact that the Qwik content is re-updating without React rerunning props.children, I think is a pretty cool property that I think is worth kind of discussing.
Yeah, and you can even have, like, I think this demo is kind of like, it will be kind of broken because the button is like a very specific component, but you could even have like a React component with another React component inside, and they are independent. Like the nested doesn't only apply to Qwik code, right? Because these components you see here, like the MUI button, in our minds are like, yeah, this is the React component, but not really, right? This is the result of doing like a Qwikify, right? So this component here is a Qwik component. Like all the components here are Qwik components. If you think about like in your, but be inside they abstract away a React component. It's kind of like, I don't know, that's kind of the way I see it, which allows what you describe, and like everything that can work with a Qwik component by default just works here. You can nest components, you can just like render things without waking up the component, like all these things just apply.
So I have a question. how much of an overlap is there between Qwik with React, as described over here, and something like Astro?
So what do you mean with overlap?
Well, it seems to me like when you start putting React components inside of Qwik application, it is very similar in terms of its behavior. The boundary between Qwik React is very similar as the boundary between Astro and React.
Yeah, I think it said earlier that I think more of the end goal of this integration is to leverage the system ecosystem, right? So I have this demo where I show this. Oops, wait. I think I broke this over. Maybe. Okay, yeah. So this ecosystem where you have this, very complicated component that does like all sorts of things and probably super useful for a dashboard. So you can leverage that, and we see that more like the utility of Qwik React. Like you can just use any existing React library. I think Astro looks at this in a different way. It's like Astro doesn't own reactivity in any ways, right? Astro doesn't. They are just like a pure like static HTML generator with the ability to have like islands of interactivity, right? So I think the first difference is like a philosophical one. Like we want to use this as a migration path. Like you can just, if you really need to use this library, you can just do it and keep, and ship fast. Like we don't want you to be blocked. Like, oh, I cannot do this because there is not this data table thing for Qwik, right? But I think the philosophy is like, well, you eventually will get all the benefits if you actually make Qwik components, because with the Qwik components, nothing will hydrate. There will not be any point where you have to say, well, run this when it's visible. It will just naturally work, right? And that's kind of the first philosophy. And
so,
I think, yeah.
I want to point out, like, if you're using something like Astro and you have multiple islands, you have a new problem. And the new problem is that you need to do inter-island communication, right? You need to say like, oh, this is a button and I clicked on this button and this button is add to shopping cart. And that shopping cart is over there. And those are in two separate islands. So now I have to have a mechanism by which data from one island has to be moved to the other island. And I believe Astro has an answer for that. But it's yet another different thing. What I like about this particular approach is the answer is just like, well, we already have reactivity, we already have components, we already know how to move data around. And so you just use the same exact primitives as you would use for anything else, and the right thing just happens.
This is a very good question, because I'm going to do this case where nothing hydrates again, okay? So right now, look at this, nothing runs, right? But if we look at the code, the material UI component has a variant, right? And the variant is actually a Qwik signal that is like contain, outline, or text, right? And we are saying that by default is contain. That makes sense? It's passed here like one of the properties, right? Then we have this kind of like select, like no Qwik, not Qwik material UI, nothing. It's just a select, right? And what we are doing is like, well, you're going to change, and we are just using the DOM API to just change the signal. Something very interesting is going to happen. So when it changes this value, there is an interesting thing happening here. So in the onChange, the signal changes, right? But because the signal changes, notice that the material UI component depends on this signal. Because the signal change in the client side, now the component needs to hydrate to be able to react to the change. So now I can connect a state from Qwik to a prop, right? And only like, not about this. This is not like hydrating when it's becoming visible. It's not hydrating when it's becoming like over. No, it's literally hydrating, like React components hydrating when there is a data dependency that changes, right? Like this one.
What's really cool about this, in my opinion, is what we've seen, and to be clear, Astro is a freaking awesome framework. Like if you're making things like personal blogs, static website stuff like that, it is so good. It is so simple. There's like no new concepts to learn. It's phenomenal at that. One thing that we've observed in island style frameworks in general in the real world, both with say Hydrogen, we work very closely with Shopify merchants on this type of architecture, with Fresh, with Astro, is because frameworks that try to be simple and load discrete, what Ryan Carniato would call coarse islands, whereas Qwik tries to be very fine grained. So you can think of it that way too. Coarse grained, large units of islands of React, and Qwik is very fine grained how and when you want it. We find that for complicated use cases like a large scale e-commerce site, a large content site, what you end up seeing as a pattern is mega islands. Because you need to have all these pieces, at first it's very simple. You have a lot of HTML, a little piece here, a little piece there, but then they need to communicate, and then you need more constructs than just very simple kind of event passing. Some people will use like dispatch events, like browser native stuff, which is great, but as things get more complex, you start to realize you're missing some of the actual tools that frameworks provide, like this simple mutable states or immutable state flows, whatever, the ability to listen and update reactively. And that's where Qwik kind of has all those out of the box. And you don't have to end up in this mega island camp on accident where you just have one gigantic React app again, just wrapped in Astro or wrapped in Fresh or wrapped in server components like kind of Next.js's new RSC is of the flavor of. So I just want to throw that in here because this whole idea again is make it simple, make it scale, and make it fast as heck throughout. And as you're doing all of this, nothing's hydrating. Even the Qwik framework in many cases is hardly downloading small pieces when you're just using signals.
Yeah. No, and I think that the same signals that power the communicate, like the whole rendering in Qwik is kind of solving the intercommunication of islands, right? We cannot forget that this material UI slider is a leaf node, but it's its own island, right? And this MUI button is its own island. And we can still, like, by changing the slide, I can still change the number here. So there is like a way of these two islands and communicating, right? And even in this case, we are not hydrating this island. Like the material UI button is never like hydrating. So there is still like the same rendering, like it's the same rendering pipeline is powering this interconnection of things, right? And another like one thing I miss is like the show table is interesting as well, because notice that the show table was never rendered in the server in the first place, right? Like that's relevant. Like if we refresh and we just show table, this thing is rendering for the first time in the browser. So it's not hydrating. Like here we are literally mounting the React component by the first time in the browser, right? Just because you do this, right? Like you just have a show which is like true or false, like false by default, and then there is like a toggle that's going to flip the value from true to false to true, show table, and then just because there is here, I just rendering this table component, which is it's just a
we lost Manu.
We lost him. I got thrown out like before too.
Really?
But, yeah, it's funny.
I just assumed you guys just accidentally closed the window. Well, while Manu's returning, I realized we have some questions in the chat that could be good to actually talk about live. We gave some quick answers, quick, no pun intended, inside of the chat as replies. But why don't we pull some up so we can actually discuss them? I think one that was really interesting. And
first question, where's Manu?
That is the first question. Somebody sent him a text message.
That's Shy, of course. Yeah, Shy.
Well, using so we use StreamYard for this, and when you use it in Chrome, it's not like Zoom and some other tools or around where you can see like people's faces and so Manu might think he's still on the stream right now. He might still be talking to his computer thinking he's still presenting, so hopefully it doesn't go on for too long. Let's open up one of these questions though. So this one is great. What is left to do for Qwik? Does it already have everything it needs? One other one was like related. Is there a roadmap? I put in a quick reply, but this is one worth discussing. Mishko, I wonder if you could take this one, give your initial sort of thoughts.
Yeah, I think what people don't realize is there's two parts, right? There's Qwik City and there's Qwik. Qwik, the framework, we feel very confident about. There's been relatively, if any, changes recently to it. Oh, welcome back, Manu.
How long? I was talking alone, I guess. For
Yeah, it's like that. A couple minutes.
Couple
3
minutes?
Yeah, you were
Damn
gone for a
it.
little bit. We had a whole conversation about you being gone, and we decided to take questions from the
I
audience.
went to the ballet again, no?
Well, do you want to? Maybe we could wrap this question, Manu.
Yeah,
I'm
let me
taking
finish this
some-
question.
Yeah, I'm taking some questions from the chat. We're answering live. We'll probably do a couple more. We can go back to you, Manu. So go ahead, Mishko.
So Qwik itself is in beta, which means no breaking changes, and we're very confident about it. And we've been discovering very little things in it, so we're feeling very, very confident about Qwik. Qwik City technically is still not in the beta, but more importantly, I think what we would like to do is to make the experience much better. We think there's a lot of room for improvement. Not necessarily in form of breaking changes, but in terms of missing features that are not yet available. Things like server actions is something that Manu's working on super hard on right now. Routes being type safe, query parameters being type safe, forms being type safe, and everything just kind of being easily kind of tied together. And so few cool things are coming. And once all of these things are kind of in, I think we're in a very good spot where we can start thinking about 1.0.
I remember I was thinking I make this tweet like a long time ago, and I asked like if performance was not important, like it was not important. Like imagine like there is infinite network, infinite like performance. Which framework will you use, right? And some people say, well, I will use Solid, right? Because it's like it's a very simple framework, like beautiful in his primitives. Or I will use React because of. I think like with Qwik, we will love that. Like we actually like trying to overachieve in the egg. Like we want to be. I mean that's kind of also like what we want to make like you love Qwik. Like it's not like I use Qwik because I want a fast website. Only thing, right? So that I think that's also a path to the 1.0. Like people are like,
I think
I'm in love with this, right?
I think that's a very good point, which is that performance is important, but it should not be at the expense of DX, right? We need to nail the DX before anything else. Yeah, I was just gonna make a joke. Like, are you rehydrated or are you resumed?
Yeah, I was actually going to say that. Yeah, I just read the comment.
I love it. Manu, is there a thought thread you want to finish before we go into more questions? I want to make sure there was not more that you wanted to be presenting that we can resume from, if you like.
No, I think the last one was making a point about the table component, because the table component was not initially rendered in SSR. Like the table component was not present in SSR. It was a Qwik component without a Qwik application without any React, and then you just toggle a signal, then suddenly a React component show up, and we are not hydrating a React component in that case. We are really like rendering by the first time SPA a React component. So also imagine how this applies for a real website. Like you actually, like one of the problems with the island architecture is that you also think in terms of SSR only. So what if I have an application where I want to show a model, right? And in that model, I want to actually show the React component by the first time. Like that model was not SSR rendered. That model is like first time in client side showing up, right? And Qwikify just allow it, right? Because you just have we're thinking about React components, but they're just Qwik components, and the Qwik components.
Wait. Can I stop you for a second? Okay, being a long-time React developer, I gotta understand this thing, right? So as soon as like we had that signal that said was set to show false, right? And then you change the signal, the reactive thing there, and then the React component renders. Does the React DOM render function run, or
Yes.
is it like okay?
Is the React render, not the React hydrate
Right.
one. So, but you don't have to think about that, right? You just have this Qwikify component, which is a Qwik component, and then you just sometimes it will happen in the server, right? And it will do internally render to string. Sometimes will happen the first time in the browser, then it will do render DOM. Sometimes it will be like waking up, so it will do from the server, so it will do like a hydrate, but you don't have to think about it, right? You just have to just use the component, right?
Yeah, so you don't have the mental burden of thinking about things that happen like in React server-side rendering, where you have like the first time the render that goes on the server, and then like you get the HTML down the wire, and then you get React going, then the listeners, then the hydration, and then you got all kinds of console logs with React 18 popping off here and there because you forgot to do strict mode or whatever that new thing is.
Yeah, no, and I will say it again, like we said at the beginning, like this sounds complicated, but if you all these implementations are all these like partial hydration is userland. Like it's not implemented in the core of Qwik. It's like I build a Qwik component that does it. Like you can build it, right? And there are people building it for Svelte and Vue and Solid. But if you are like, oh, I would love to try this new, like you can actually reach us in this core, and you can check the implementation in GitHub and see how currently this is, how this actually works, because it's really like a Qwik component. Like you can check it. It's not like magic that we built into the core. It's just a userland, pure userland component in Qwik.
Cool. Very cool.
Maybe we can go into, I think this is another good question. This is going to keep coming up, and oops, let me load this up here. So basically a question from Juicy Benjamin is, currently I know React. I'm thinking I need SSR and SSG for it in the future. In its current state, would you recommend learning Qwik now or focus on what works, aka Next.js? I could take a quick stab at this, and anybody please jump in. So I think the reality here is, because Qwik is still in beta, expect a surprise or two, right? So if you as an individual, you're like, I want no surprises. I just want to replicate what I know, and I can predict everything that'll happen, probably React Next.js is right. If you like to experiment, you like to try something new, and you're intrigued by the new DX of Qwik, the more reactive approach like Solid.js, which is quite exciting in our opinions, and can create more elegant, more scalable code in a lot of interesting ways too, as well as like the performance qualities of Qwik, really lightning fast, regardless of the complexities. Just load times are pretty insane and unheard of. And don't mind that the ecosystem will be partially there. You can bring a lot of React stuff, but like, are you going to bring like React Mobx in? Not really. And so React components, especially Leaf components, what someone called dumb components, and sort of islands-oriented components, like the table is perfect. But like some state management library you like, maybe interesting to see how that works with Qwik. And so it kind of probably depends on how much you want the performance, the DX, and the sort of novelty. We've had some people try like our mitosis project, which is more early beta. And like, you got to need that thing because it's going to have some hiccups. So we don't want someone to try Qwik or mitosis or other project of ours and say, oh, I hated that thing. It's like, oh yeah, it's in beta. You know, we're still improving things. We're collaborating. We're all contributing on it together. Qwik is in a more mature beta state, I would definitely say. And it's just about DX refinement these days in a lot of ways. But that's my quick take on it. Please, anybody else jump in. I think, Manu, you had something you want to add.
No, I want to add, and I mentioned this in some of the talks, that when I give the talk I've been giving this year about Qwik is about the concepts more than Qwik. So obviously it's in the context of Qwik, but I always tell the audience that what I'm going to talk about in this talk is not only about Qwik, it's about some concepts, right? And some of the most important ones, because is resumability. Resumability is not really like a feature. It's not something that you can easily add. And we are so sure about this. Maybe someone would prove us wrong, but we are sure that really things need to be kind of from the ground up to work this way. And we are not the only ones doing it. So I think Qwik solves the resumability problem in a specific way. Others are doing it in a different way. Like Marco has a very different approach where they like kind of bundle code, has a threads of interaction. Like they do it in a different way. Like Solid, Ryan mentioned a couple of times that he's thinking about Solid 2, where he wants to bring some of the concept of resumability. I think what is interesting, I think if you're like someone like want to learn things, I will definitely give Qwik a look, just because we are bringing something very new to the table. The same way that maybe Svelte bring like the reactivity to the table. Like that point, like, was a good framework to just like try, like just see how it works, get some ideas. Maybe you realize that, and that inspired like a lot of like later like all the React libraries of how to do things, right? So even if you don't want to, like, I think it's a good thing to just try because of the concept, right? So even if you at the end of the day you decide that Qwik is not like your tool, I think it's a good thing to learn, and more frameworks will follow up.
It's good to note that he said he's on a side project. So if it's not something for like production, yeah, definitely, I think you should go for it. Just to also, we would love the feedback first of all, but secondly, yeah, that's what side projects are for trying new things, I think. And I found another interesting question here that I'm also curious about. So this is a question. So can we see more complex example project including authentication, serverless, etc.? But next to that, I saw another one that is connected is can we use the next auth style libraries in Qwik by best TikTok trends? And I'm curious about this. So basically like libraries of these sorts, right? So NextAuth is very specific to Next, right? It's because it runs on the server and on the client, and there's like a provider and context being passed over. So would like stuff that works with providers work inside Qwik? And how would we use like React context? So context dependent components within Qwik, how would that work?
So every React component is his own island, right? So if you use any sort of React functionality, it's there. It will not communicate between each other. In the demos we show, it works because it was just a component having a prop, which is what on change. I can actually, from my code, have like a signal that changes, and then there is something like the blue code is like being like quick, doing like the connection with the signal. You have to think when you use Qwik React, like every little one is like its own mini React application, right? So if you are, that's why it's more like a migration strategy. It's more like, well, I have this thing, I can just put
so
it there.
Maybe we, like the idea would be you'd have to kind of a little bit rewire how you work with it. So you'd have to have like the global stuff maybe inside a signal or a store of Qwik.
Or make like wider, like if it's a migration path, I think it's okay to make like a little bit wider island, right? Like in this example, I'm making like a leaf node, but in the other example I have, it was like an inline React component there where I use several Qwik React components, and they share a context and everything works, right? Like literally everything works. Like I have another demo where they are using like 3JS React.
Yeah,
I use it like all sort of like WebGL stuff, and that works. Like it's not. We are not replicating React. It's using React, right? So there is no like this will not work. The only limitation is there are different React applications, right? That's it. That's the only thing. I believe that they are solving that problem in a way.
So like a migration path that I can envision would be like, say you start either you have a React application, whether you're using Next.js or a Create React app, and you want to try and leverage Qwik. So you start a new Qwik project, right? And then you just take it page by page. Maybe you take a page, you wrap it inside a Qwikify, and then you have your like own application. And then like you can slowly do
and
that.
I think later you are like, oh, but this is this big library. Again, like I use in 3JS for a graph, or I use like a very nice graph libraries in React, right? Like it's not, like I can tell, like when you have to migrate, you have to port things. But if I tell you have to port a whole like dependency, like the graph library, you will be like, that's not going to happen, right? Like at some point we will have that library like native, but in the meantime, you can just use it. And most of the time, even like for a graph, you don't really need to hydrate it, right? Because it's just maybe just static, maybe not, right? But you can just use that. And I think it unblocks you. Like I think for these big things that it's very hard to migrate, it really unblocks you. And we see like people in the community saying like, I'm using this, I'm starting to use this data grid, this graph dependency with a lot of success, or even like material UI components with a lot of success. So it's cool to see that.
Cool. But I wonder if the community really wants or needs a little bit more examples. And if you do, like shout out at us, like send us a tweet. Like I'm looking for things to do now and experiment with Qwik and writing posts and educating a little bit. So like if you have ideas or something you want to try, you don't have time, like feel free, just ping me, Twitter, like here in the comments or whatever.
Okay, I want to jump in now and ask Manu a question. So we showed how material UI can be used within React. When you have multiple material UI kind of leaves or islands on the page, you want to make sure that they share their common themes. and theming is done through context, I believe.
Yeah.
How does the context work across islands?
So we have been suggesting is that every of this island, we are just making an island where it's just the component itself, right? Like we are just making an island where it's just the button, but nothing stopped you to create either an island with a provider. So you actually will be like different providers many times. Like in every island you make for a component, you actually have the provider, right? That passes that information. That's one way to do it. If you think of this as leaf nodes, so every of one is like you're using React as a leaf nodes. Another one is like, maybe most of the time you don't have to do it in this way, especially because the material UI components are always used together. So you know what I mean? Like you either like have a list of in material UI, you will see like in the same piece of code, you will see like 8 material UI, like material UI list, material UI item, material UI avatar. So maybe the better approach in this case is like, well, I'm just going to create this island with all these things inside, right? And if you have a provider there, it will just be shared. So it's not like, in this example, I'm making it very simple, but think that you can have your own mini React applications, right? In this case, it's just a component, but it's like a single component React application, the ones I've been showing, but it can be anything, right?
I could also see there's also, I mean, the higher order component pattern in React works quite well. So you could very easily make your own little with theme. And when you do Qwikify the React component, do Qwikify with theme component, and now you're reusing theme across, and it's basically using components even in a disparate way, like your demo mono would actually still be configured theme-wise in one place too.
Yeah. Yes.
Also, what's interesting about this whole thing is it really kind of resembles like what you talk about when you talk about micro front-end architecture, right? It's kind of similar problems, right? Because at the end of the day, you're kind of trying to pass the chasm, right? You have like these islands or whatever, these containers that hold things, and you need something to orchestrate all the data bindings between them. So it's very similar. So I think the whole like separation of either horizontal scaling or just vertical slicing is the way to kind of think about it.
Yeah, no, and I think it's, oh, sorry.
And I'll add one thing and then you go, Mono. I apologize for interrupting. The only thing I want to add on that one that I think is fascinating is we see a lot of large companies that want to build micro front ends, yet they use like 5 different frameworks inside of the across their company. So imagine you have an app and you're doing any type of micro front ends where all those frameworks are hydrating. So you're downloading all of the code for every framework to load a page, versus with Qwik, you get it all hydration free. So suddenly that like pipe dream of like, let's bring all our components together and we use many frameworks on one page actually can be reality without these major costs, which is exciting. Go ahead, Manu.
No, and even in that example, you can have like a React component emitting an event that's going to change a signal, and that signal is used as a prop of a view component, and the view component is only going to hydrate when the prop changes, right? So it's even if that communication, it can be lazy, right? It doesn't have to everything hydrate. I have to say that these are whole different conversations, but I think like when we talk about micro frontends and the communication between it, we are talking about protocols, right? We are talking about systems built independently, probably in a different version. So the only way to solve that is like a protocol, like in HTML. You have a iOS and a server written in Rust. They can communicate, right, through HTTP. And one of the core things of protocols is that things needs to be serializable. So in Qwik, everything is serializable. That's kind of the whole point. Like that's how it works, right? It just needs to be. Otherwise, it will tell you it doesn't work. It needs to be serializable. So that's why this is a different conversation. But with the Qwik, we have the containers. The micro frontend is kind of trivial because we don't have a problem like, oh, now suddenly there is like this class or something that will not work across because it cannot be serialized, or like how it can be communicated. So this kind of thing naturally work better without errors because the compiler, like Qwik, very early in the development will tell you like, that's not serializable, right? So it's not like something you will find out much later and then say like, oh, I need to refactor everything. Like it's a nice property to have, right? Things to be serializable.
But to get back to like the earlier conversation we had, we still have like this conversation. So how would you handle authentication context?
I think if you're using Next auth, that's very tied to Next, right? That's extremely tied to their not only to the component model, because we are talking about the component model of React. This goes beyond that. Like this probably affects the middleware system of Next and a lot of things. So we have a very similar middleware system. There are people making integrations with Firebase already. There are people making integrations with Supabase. And Qwik City has a framework, has the right tools to be able to run code in the server and pass it down. And then it will be like a quick context that you could, just do whatever with it. You can pass it to a React component if you want it. But I will say that a Next auth is unlikely that Qwik City or Qwikify will solve it. Qwik City is the component model. This is like a meta framework thing. It's not the
So
scope.
we'll need Qwik auth for Qwik City.
Yeah, no, there are people working on it, but yeah, definitely. If you're interested, also like reach us in Discord. Like there is like, in general, we will find you. Like if you just say like, hey, you just make caps, I want to help, I will find you. So
For what it's worth, we've had a lot of success of people migrating things from React to Qwik surprisingly seamlessly. So if there's something you want to model after, sometimes people go source to source, like compare the source and migrate it, or sometimes, the concept is well proven in the React world. So just bringing the concept to Qwik can be very straightforward and be very fun. And if you ever want to make a little open source something, NPM package that people adopt, it's nice to get in early, because a lot of the popular React stuff, as React was getting big, was the ones who were just first. So have that in the back of your mind if that's a fun idea for you.
Also, you could use mitosis to kind of compile it to Qwik, which is another cool project that we're doing at Builder.
That's true, especially if a lot of people who we find are really interested in something like Qwik, like a lot of the new tech. They think Solid is awesome too, because Solid is super awesome, or Marco or Astro. And yeah, mitosis is a cool way. You're like, hey, I want to make something that supports them all. There you go.
Completely.
We're pretty much at time here. We usually try and wrap within an hour. Somebody wave at me if you're dying to get one last point or question in. Otherwise, I just want to thank everybody for coming. This was really, really fun, really engaging. Really appreciate the questions. Qwik React is available now. This is all in beta, so the docs are there. We could try and link to it in the chat, but it's just as easy as you saw. Spin up a Qwik project if you don't have it. And what is it? NPM run Qwik add React, and then just go to town. There's even a demo example there too. Yeah, Yoav?
Or Qwik.new on your URL tab, and you go to StackBlitz.
yes,
That's true. You don't even need all the local setup. So we're eager for you all to try it out. Send us the feedback. Chat us up in Discord, especially if you want to contribute. Like Manu said, we're like hawks about that and supporting people to make cool stuff on top of Qwik. Otherwise,
we nurture it. Like
Yeah.
really, like, it's like a part of us. Like you are interested, and it's like it's like a new project. Where do you start? I have like meetings every week with people, like they want to do this, the storybook thing, or like they want to, and I just unblock them with here, there, and pretty much everyone like has a good time, and then it's not the first and the last one PR. Like that definitely doesn't happen. Just more coming later, which is very nice. We have some contributors actually in the audience, so.
We've got like Glenn Blecker, Leifer Mendez. Awesome people. We'd love the contributors so much, and we'll continue to shout you out and feature you everywhere, because it's really makes such a huge difference. I saw Yoav unmuted because he maybe want to get in a word in. Before
I just wanted to say, like, respect Qwik heroes. Like, we super appreciate all the community and what you're doing. It's incredible to see. Like, good on you. That's what I got to say.
Yeah, and we could shoot you some swag too. If you've been jumping in and contributing, we haven't sent you swag, ping us. We could do that too. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining. This was a ton of fun. We will probably be back next week. We're coming back to a regular schedule. We're figuring it out. Follow us on Twitter and we'll post when we'll be coming back. Subscribe to us on YouTube, then you'll be notified. Otherwise, until next time, thanks again and see y'all.
See ya.